And we have a legend in the building, so influential on us in so many ways. And, you know, he's one of those folks that carry the torch of the Paul Robesons and the Mr. Harry Belafontes. And
yes, one of my mentors. I'm very proud of that.
And you recruited me and Tough to be a part of an organization back in the early 2000s, yes. Artists and Activists Coalition, right. And got a chance to sit with the late, great Ruby D.
And Ozzie
Davis. And Mr. Law was one of the chairs of that organization. So I'm going to let you take it. And
very influential in my career and the path I've chosen. But Mr. Law was one of the first to have a syndicated talk show, night talk, on NAB, which it was the National Black Network. Mm-hmm. So, without further ado, hi, Mr. Law.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So can you pick up where Davey left off as far as that, what you had going, the platform you had in Harlem to discuss radio?
Yeah. We were pointing out that radio, particularly black radio aimed at the black community, and even in particular black-owned radio, was being pushed into what appeared to be an irreversible decline. And it still appears that that's still what is happening. And so we were trying to point out what it was that radio was dealing with or attempting to deal with in order to survive. And it's interesting when Davey D said that Michael Powell told him go to the internet. That's when Michael Powell was the chairman of the FCC.
Right.
Michael Powell also said, as chairman of the FCC, which is a commission that is put in place in order to protect the public interest.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He also said that he didn't know what the public interest meant. Then
our leadership.
No, don't blame him on us. Bush appointed him as part of the aggression against black people and the very legitimate aspirations of black people. But what Davey D was talking about as he was summing up, I think is a good place to begin this part of the conversation. When he talked about Michael Powell, talked about the kind of things that are being done that are almost behind the scenes. The only reason they are behind the scenes is that we don't really pay attention, mm-hmm. because all the things that the FCC is involved in is public. It's on their website.
Right.
But people don't think in terms of going to the FCC website. Mm-hmm. We've got some brothers who go there every day. And see, one of the things that is happening here in New York City, when we talk about the loss of radio,
right.
And one of the premier black-owned radio stations and one of the premier black stations in New York City was Inner City,
right,
and BLS and WLIB.
Yes.
And they were literally forced out of business.
Right.
And one of the reasons that the mega corporations have no problem with doing some of the things that appear to some of us to be unscrupulous and sometimes illegal, right, is that they understand that by whatever means they get the station, the FCC is going to routinely give them the broadcast license. Mm-hmm. Charles Barron and myself, Betty Dobson, a brother named Michael North, we filed a petition 2 years ago,
yes,
to block the transfer of the broadcast license,
right,
from Inner City to Ucapia, the company that was fronting off Magic Johnson as an owner, so that it would
fronting off Magic
so that
Johnson.
It would appear that it had some kind of black ownership.
Interest, yeah.
But he had as much ownership as Jay-Z has of the Nets. Right. And the company that he was fronting off, since they took over the station,
right,
they have since sold it anyway
to Emmis.
Mm.
Right.
But what we argued that black people, people with the communicators, the ideas, we are being removed from the marketplace of ideas.
Right.
Our ideas are as powerful as any ideas on the planet. Mm-hmm. We could compete with anybody on the level of ideas. You could put 6 right-wing talk shows on the air in New York City all day long and 1 black station, and let us talk. We can come up, we can compete with them. Our ideas will resonate with our audience, no matter what they put against us. The only way to silence us and to dominate the media is to remove us. They can't compete with us, even with their billboards and TV commercials. So the only way that they could silence us would be to remove us. So that is what is happening. We filed a petition to block the transfer of the broadcast license, not the sale of the station.
Right.
The broadcast and the new people, now Emmis, still don't have the license. I just received a letter from the FCC saying that they are going to reject my petition. They're going to deny my petition. And we said, oh, surprise, surprise.
Right.
They're going to deny our petition. We held it up for 2 years. We are taking it away from the FCC now to the D.C. Federal Appeals Court.
Wonderful.
And take it away from the FCC because the mega corporations have bought and own the FCC.
Right.
So
right.
they have stripped the FCC of all of its structure, guidelines. There are no FCC rules anymore. So that one of the things that you talked about, that a station is playing only one, for instance, one of the issues with hip-hop is there's only one body of music being played on the commercial radio stations.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a time when you could go to that radio station and demand that they played other music because they were compelled to balance according to the FCC. The mega corporations have taken that away, so that the community, no matter what the issue, I think the brother mentioned, David D mentioned, or one of you mentioned that there was a protest of using the N-word on Hot 97.
Hot 97, yeah.
See, there was a time when you could take that to the station, demonstrate that it does harm to our community, which is how I got into radio.
Wow.
By pointing out that the film and the music Superfly, at one point in its career as a film or as a song, was beginning to do harm to our community. I'm working with some kids in Brooklyn in an anti-drug and a drug rehab program. We had young kids who couldn't afford cocaine, but they had cocaine spoons on chains around their neck.
Whoa.
Because the film had made coke dealing so romantic, so fashionable.
Nothing new. There's a rap group actually out now affiliated with Bad Boy Entertainment called Coke Boys. There's a movement out in Jersey, Stop Shooting movement. They have a movement called Hope Boys. So we've been trying to push that, like, to counterbalance the negative push on from Hot 97, all these mega, marketing, promotion / brainwashing organizations.
Programmers.
So when you see the historical context, when you said that was going on in the 70s, in the 80s, the cycle continues.
But here was the point. Let me hurry and get to the point.
Yes, sir.
We were able to go to a radio station, WWRL, and raise that concern.
Right.
One of the reasons they were receptive is because I came from a legitimate community-based organization, and their license had to be renewed every 2 years. And they did not need anyone challenging the license renewal by pointing out that they were doing harm to the community and ignoring voices from the community. That's no longer in place at the FCC. Now the licensee controls content. So when they see, it used to be understood that people who owned radio stations did not own the airwaves.
Right.
The people who owned the radio station rented the airwaves.
Right.
That's why their lease had to be renewed every 2 years. And their lease had to be renewed every 2 years if no one from the community objected to it.
Right.
So it was the general public that owned the airwaves.
Right.
That has been changed. Here's the point we want to make. In order to put some teeth back and give the community legal standing, Congress has oversight over the FCC.
Okay.
We have gone to the Congressional Black Caucus. Now you can talk about our leaders. We have gone to the Congressional...
I was being sarcastic. I was being sarcastic.
I'm with you. I'm saying, so now you can come back and talk about our leaders. We've gone to the Congressional Black Caucus to say, would y'all take this to Congress?
Right.
And here's what's happening to the black community. And there's a great deal that is happening in addition to the concentration of ownership into the hands of a small group of whites. But there's a great deal that is happening on the level of ideas and information. So the Congressional Black Caucus, we hand-delivered our letter to the chairman of the caucus, Emmanuel Cleaver, and he was chairman then, and hand-delivered it to him in his office in Kansas City. Hand-delivered it to Barbara Jackson Lee from Houston.
Yeah.
Sent it to Gregory Meeks in New York, Yvette Clark in New York, and Hakeem Jeffries in New York.
Okay.
Hakeem wasn't a part of it initially. He wasn't in Congress. But since then, we have raised the issue, taken it to Hakeem. The only person who has acknowledged even seeing it was Hakeem. So he has acknowledged that he saw it, that he read it, and that he's asking his legal staff to review it. But none of them have responded on our behalf. None of them have attempted to do anything at all.
Why do you think that is?
Because they are, I'm going to say it nicely, because
Our leadership?
they are professional politicians. Professional politicians don't work for their constituents. Professional politicians work for
A check.
Albany.
Yeah, they work for the real America, corporate America.
Right.
So the real decisions, all of the decisions that are being made. I saw a thing on television, on the news the other day, where they were having I think it was a senatorial hearing, and they had the television doctor, the guy, Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz.
And they were having a hearing,
Right.
and they were asking him about using the word miracle for a diet pill. And they were coming down on him, saying they were making an example of him because he said that this diet pill was a miracle pill. Do you think, look at the world, look at this country. Is that our concern? That there's a television doctor with a pill, a diet pill that actually works, but they don't like the fact that he uses the word miracle. Like nobody else. Like, what about Miracle Whip? What about the thing that they have a thing
That
called a
kills
miracle?
you.
They got a thing called a miracle bra. They got all people use miracle in marketing. The community is not so silly that they are actually influenced by that term. However, a couple of days later, you're watching news and hear that the pharmaceutical industry is in decline. Say, oh,
Got to protect their interests.
so now you begin to understand why these professional politicians who work for corporate America, not for their constituents, would have a hearing that's maybe the first step in trying to dismiss or diminish the reach and influence of those drugs or those pills that are not coming from the pharmaceutical industry.
Now, Sin put me up on something last week in discussing, your involvement in the show, and that you had access to a research study that was done by Harvard University in the 70s, I believe, that determined what moves black people. Could you talk about that study and how it relates to this conversation?
Here's the interesting thing about that study, that many of the people, black people that I knew in the entertainment industry at that time, had no knowledge of the study. It was called a study of the soul music environment. It was conducted by Harvard University, and so it became known as the Harvard Report. And some people say that Clive Davis commissioned Harvard to conduct the report. Clive Davis said he didn't do it. But what the report lays out is how to take over and control black music and the black music industry. Now, at that time, there was much more of a black music industry than there is now.
Yes.
There were black-owned record companies on various levels. There were black-owned record stores. So you could decide, you and Sin could decide to put out a record right now. If you put the record out right now, you have difficulty getting airplay and you have difficulty getting distribution of your record. But in those days, you could take your record to somebody that was called a one-stop distributor.
Yeah, mom and pop. Well, not before the mom and pop, the one-stop.
One-stop distributor. They would take it. Ted Hudson in St. Louis would take just take it to Ted in St. Louis. He will take it to all of the independently owned black record stores in St. Louis. So your record would be in the stores in St. Louis as soon as you were able to afford it, as soon as you were ready, which is one of the reasons that in those days you used to hear a record break out regionally. You would hear it first in Maryland and then in Washington, D.C., then you would hear it in Philadelphia, in New York. It was because the independent record company could not afford to press 1 million records at one time. So they would do 5,000 records, and they would sell those in Philadelphia. It would be a hit in Philadelphia. It used to be a thing called a tip sheet that independent record promoters would come by and representing your record. And they would show the program director in a bigger market, here's the tip sheet from Philadelphia, from Washington. This record is number 1 and 2 in these markets. It's a good record. Go on the record for me. Also, they had developed a relationship, on a personal relationship, so that when a guy like Isaac Hayes, who nobody ever heard of, comes with a song that's 9 minutes long,
Yeah.
at an era when 3-minute records was the criteria,
Standard, yeah.
Wow.
the standard. Isaac came with a record that was 9 minutes long by the time I get to Phoenix, with a whole lot of talk into the song. Well, nobody's going to play that record. Rick Sklar here at WABC wasn't going to play it because he was white, so he wouldn't play black music. Even when Isaac Hayes was a monster star, Rick Sklar wouldn't play his music. He was only going to get it played at the independent black radio stations. But what happens is that an independent promoter takes the record, comes to the local program director, and they would say, I have some new product. They were calling it product in those days. I have some new product, and I want you to play this record for me, not for Isaac Hayes. Never heard of Isaac Hayes, but I knew Buddy Scott, the promoter who was coming with the record. And he would say, do this for Al Bell. Al Bell is the owner, the brother who owns Stax Records. So do this for Al Bell. And that was the kind of very personal, very human network that existed all over the country.
Right.
Empowering from the inside. Empowered our
Absolutely.
community, yeah.
So then you would play the record. The record would play. Independent promoters, Teddy Powell, M. Morton Hall, independent promoters would see that the record is now number 1 on RL in New York. They would bring Isaac Hayes to town. They would present Isaac Hayes in a small enough venue that they could afford. He wasn't a monster star yet. And so there was an entertainment industry where there were independent black record promoters, independent concert promoters, people who owned places. Sylvia, you remember Sylvia's Blue Morocco in the Bronx? That's Sylvia from the Mickey and Sylvia duo, who owned Sylvia's Blue Morocco in the Bronx. There was an independent record entertainment industry that was really thriving. People were making a great deal of money, but they couldn't make it as fast as they could make it if they hooked up with a major corporation. So that if Columbia Records offered you a deal, they could give you your money up front. They started offering cash advances, but many, many black artists understood the value of having your own industry, and they stayed with those independent companies. As a result, there needed to be a blueprint to put those companies out of business.
Wow.
The Harvard Report.
Right.
And the Harvard Report talked about how to do that, how to package the money, the music, how to segment the music, to how to just control it. And it was looking at how things were developing, what the trend would be, and preparing record companies for the future. You know, and it worked really very well. And it had to do with imitating. It had to do first with changing what was coming out of black music. Change it, water it down, make it something that white artists could imitate.
Yeah. Dumb it down.
And then if you could get a powerful, popular white artist, Lionel Richie, to start to water down the music.
Oh, wow.
And if you could get him to do some duets with a powerful white artist, Kenny Rogers, and the black audience won't notice that the music suddenly sounds a little bit more country than it used to.
Now, to your point, I had the honor and privilege of working with Gerald Busby before he passed away, and you know, he shared a expose that he had put together, and I think he was referencing the Harvard Report. But he talked about how black independently owned record labels owned the lion's share of the music market in the 70s.
That's right.
We were killing the corporates and the white boys. We were killing them.
Right.
And they were like, well, how do we break the back of this independent movement? And I guess this Harvard Report was something that fueled that energy.
The Harvard Report said imitate it. And so if you can get some dominant or prominent black artists to start to subtly change what they do, black audiences won't notice that right away. Then you get the white artists to start doing it also. Now the black artist is doing music that white artists can imitate. See, there was a time when black music was so powerful, Tom Jones could not sing like Wilson Pickett. They couldn't sing like James Brown. They couldn't sing like Gladys
that
Knight.
little extra soul that we put on things that takes that little extra something that we have that they can't replicate.
But if you can take it out, if you can get the black artists to stop doing that, get the black artists to water it down, then you can begin to produce a music that the white artists can imitate. Once you produce the music that white artists can imitate, then the white artists will come out and since the award shows are rigged from the beginning,
that's right.
Then the white artists will get the Soul Music Award.
Justin Timberlake. Give me some more.
I'm thinking on hip hop level, and I'm thinking about Macklemore.
And you know,
Eminem
even Eminem, as talented as Eminem is, there's still that something that's Redman.
You know,
like that soul, it's that extra something that we put on it. Rakim,
right?
It's that
They
extra,
couldn't imitate.
so when we
Rakim.
dumb it down, we create the bridge for our music to be taken from us.
Right.
In the Black Arts Movement, Professor Larry Neal, one of the architects of the Black Arts Movement, prominent poet, activist, revolutionary, and Larry Neal said to black poets at the time, these are the fiery black poets of the Black Arts Movement.
Right.
Larry Neal said that if we're going to really reach the people with our poetry, because our poetry was wonderful, it was excellent, but the masses of the people were not listening to that. And Larry said that if you're going to really reach the masses, we're going to have to learn to poet the way James Brown sings. And then when you watch hip-hop artists, it seems like the hip-hop artists heard Larry say that. Because hip-hop artists move up and down the stage like James Brown. Mm-hmm. They turn the microphone up into their mouth like James Brown.
Mm-hmm. Oh, James Brown's the father of our culture.
Yeah.
They have a rhythm. They have an energy and a rhythm like James Brown. Mm-hmm. Larry was right. With that whole style is how you resonate with the masses of the people, because you see there's something in there that, as you pointed out a moment ago, is uniquely our own. Mm-hmm. And so people in the audience, they don't necessarily say, oh, that's for me. They just feel it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They just relate to it. And if you can take that out, here's what happened to radio. Black radio was powerful. It was playing music from the total black experience and sound. Mm-hmm. What happened is that black owners and managers made the mistake of trying to accommodate white supremacy. They tried to accommodate racism. So racism said, black is too powerful, and we can't compete with y'all. We got TV commercials running, we got billboards up, but black and white people continue to go to the black radio station. We can't compete with you. Y'all, it's too black, and black is too powerful, so we don't want you to be black anymore. So black owners, like the owners of WBLS and the owners and managers of WWRL, they said, okay, racism, if you don't want us to be black, we'll accommodate you. We won't be black. We'll be urban. If we can tone down the black. So then you decide to be urban. Then racism says a couple of years later, we don't like urban either. That's
Churban.
still too black. We'll be adult contemporary.
AC.
Right? And then racism ultimately says, actually, we don't want you around at all. Are they around?
Nope.
All of those efforts to accommodate racism, inner city is out of business. WWRL is a Spanish language station taken over by the people who really own the station, changed the format entirely. All of what RL has done to punk out and back down and concede, still they are driven out. They made every concession they could make. The owner of that station told me once that he did not want, when I was there, that he did not want me to bring Gary Bird over with me because he didn't want all of that hotep stuff on his radio station.
Come on.
Then they said that I was too black and that you can't sell Bob Law's brand of black. So they moved me out, wouldn't let Bird come, toned it down until they have now been forced to even stop speaking English. See, racism will turn you on your head and spin you around. if you try to accommodate racism, it will ultimately crush you. You have to be willing to push back. You've got to be willing to stand up to it.
Yeah. So, sorry, not to cut you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I knew about the Harvard report because I worked on a film with you. And you, working on that film, it was tentatively titled. What is the current title of your film?
Saying it loud.
Yes.
I'm proud.
You showed the importance of black radio in the community, and Davey touched on it a little bit, and you touched on it as far as the independent artists, but I'm talking about the community being aware of what's going on and being able to mobilize them. Can you touch on that right now? And we always talk about not putting ad dollars. They always say that our community, although we're the top consumer, how many billions do we spend a year? They say that our advertising, they pay less to be on black stations than they do on white stations because they say the audience is not there. Can you touch on that?
Touch on that?
Yes, please.
To put it really simple terms, black radio is going out of business because the black radio station can't pay its bills.
Right.
That's basically what it is. They are going out of business because they can't pay their bills. They can't pay their bills because they don't get paid what they deserve based on how well they actually perform. So that a black radio station, in trying to sell advertising, runs into what is called an automatic minority discount. So that if you're a salesperson from your black-owned radio station goes to an ad agency and says, my rates are $100 a spot, $60, 60-minute spot, a 60-second spot is $100. The ad agency routinely says, we'll give you $75. We just automatically discount. So you say, but why is that? They say because black consumers do not have the same value as white consumers.
We have more.
They say we have less value. So we're not going to pay you. Now, here's how they get away with that.
Okay.
The black radio station or the black magazine, the black media refuses to confront that. So they won't come back and say you could say to that ad agency, listen to my station tomorrow. I want you to hear the editorial that's going to run tomorrow about what you just said to me about the value of black consumers. We and look at the community forums that we are hosting, the way WURD in Philadelphia has done, that makes it clear to black audiences how they are actually being perceived and characterized in the industry. But the black owners in New York City would not do that. Right. When they told them that your audience is not worth $100, they would say, okay, we'll take the 75. And over time, we are going to convince you that we are worth the $100. They thought that the agency just did not understand the black consumer.
Right.
They never were willing to admit that the agency is part of a racist institution that is deliberately trying to crush black people, take black consumer dollars for granted. But the black owners, which is probably one of the reasons that the whites who sold those radio stations chose them to sell it to, but those black owners would never acknowledge the political realities in this society. And they would say that even if we would go as activists, put pressure on the agencies, call for economic sanctions, force those agencies to spend money with black media, those black stations, like Inner City, they would go get the advertising money and tell the ad agency, those activists in the street don't speak for us. And then they will say to each other and say at their luncheons and conventions, that it wasn't the black power in the street. We went into the agency and we convinced the agency that we were a good buy, that you can reach the public through us. WBLS had a campaign on Madison Avenue that said, don't buy us because we're black. Buy us because we reach the people. What the ad industry said to them is that, what people are you talking about? We already reach white people.
Right.
The only reason that we deal with you at all is that you can deliver other people. You can deliver black people.
Right.
If you can't deliver black people,
What do you?
why do I have to spend money with you? I'm already reaching white people.
Can I ask you a question? I'm gonna frame it as sort of a joke. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Django. If you saw the movie Django, if radio industry is the movie Django, who's Steven?
See, there's a thing that was introduced in Virginia in the 1700s called meritorious manumission.
Oh, Dr. Claude Anderson, big up.
Now, Stephen was trying to gain meritorious manumission. You can be freed if you tell on other slaves,
Right.
if you invent something that the slave owner can benefit from, if you save the slave owner's life, if you do something of good merit that benefits the slave owner, then you could be freed without question, without any due process. That's what manumission is.
Yeah.
Right.
Meritorious manumission is very real. It was actually introduced in legislation in Virginia
It's law.
in the 1700s. However, meritorious manumission has also been passed down psychologically, emotionally to black people. So there are black people who are trying to say always to the slave owner that I'm with you, boss.
We sick, boss.
These people in the street, that's right.
sick.
Malcolm said, well, we sick. The people in the street are putting the pressure on. But boss, don't worry. We don't respond to them. They don't have any, they don't move us.
Right.
We're with you.
So when a person like Ebro at Hat 97 says you have the majors and you have the minors, and we're with the majors, you got to step up.
Right.
What he's really saying is that, you know, I'm on the inside. I'm going to protect my position from the inside. He doesn't even know that's what he's doing. That's something that's been handed down to. Wow, that's deep.
See, if I can make it clear to the ruling class, or however you want to call it, to the oppressor, if I can make it clear that I'm not a threat, then perhaps they will hire me, they will keep me. When they are firing all the black folk, when they're changing the format, let me make some public statements right away that I understand what they're doing.
Right.
That they are simply doing what's in their own best interest. That people who have money, they're using their money effectively. We keep raising the wrong issue. That is trying to send a signal to those white owners that we are safe. You can trust us. You can keep us. You're going to get rid of everybody else on the station, but you don't have to get rid of us, because we are still, we are your apologists. Meritorious manumission, it still exists. It is what a lot of people are doing, is what black ownership did. Black ownership, rather than fight back. See, rather than fight back, black ownership said, we will be whatever you want us to be. Until the corporate America finally says, we don't even want you to be. And then now they are out of business with all of the compromises. See, there in the black community, you may have heard this from professional politicians. You will hear them, and black business people, you might have heard them say that politics is the art of compromise. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But people say politics is the art of compromise. What they are saying is that they have perfected the art of backing down and punking out. And that's how they have lived their lives. That's been their career. Wow. So rather than simply acknowledge that I've been a punk all my life, what they say is, I have perfected punking out to an art form. It is the art of compromise. Compromise means when I go into the meeting, I don't even intend to get what I came for. I'm coming into the meeting prepared to get less than what I was coming for, because I have learned the art of compromise. And it suggests that getting a little bit, I only got a little bit, but you should all applaud me and respect me because I am so skillful. I know how to get a little bit.
Wow.
So we have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about the future of black radio, and where do you think it's heading?
Let me just say this before we go there, because
Sure.
y'all are the future. That's why I like talking to you. You know, you are the future for real, and what we really need to
Thank
do
you.
is to look at exactly how to pursue that,
Right.
what that future should be. But I just want to say this, if I can, real quick about
Of
Snoop
course.
Dogg. Snoop Dogg said that he is no longer wants to be known as Snoop Dogg. He wants to be known as Snoop Lion.
He's lying.
Yeah, he's lying.
He's
My man, he's lying.
well,
Get that check, Snoop Dogg.
because there's a theater out in my neighborhood in Westbury where he's appearing, and it says Snoop Dogg, and underneath it says AKA Snoop Lion. But I don't know what prompted him. I don't know what I understand that he might have been talking to some rosters, and he might be trying to associate with the Lion of Judah with his move to become Snoop Lion. However, it was in the Malcolm said, and looking at the liberation struggle in the Congo, that the youth arm of that liberation struggle was called Simbas. And Simba means young lion. And Malcolm said that we need to have a Simba movement in this country.
Right.
And Maulana Karinga and the US organization on the West Coast organized a youth component called Simba, because Simba means young lion.
Right.
So I don't know what Snoop had in mind, but it is much better to be a Simba than to be a dog. And so I don't know what his motivation is or how long he's going to stick with it, but I think that it's a little encouraging that he would even make the public statement and go from being a dog to a Simba, because if he recognizes that being a dog is unworthy, then maybe Bow Wow might change his name, since it was Snoop who named him. Maybe Bow Wow can become Simba, but maybe other people might consider the power of the word and consider the power of names, and maybe he can get something, or if we begin to talk about it more, maybe we can kind of get people in that whole industry to reconsider the kinds of names they are choosing.
Yeah.
You know, and so there might be something good comes out of it. But I hear you. I've not heard anybody say they trust or believe in it.
Well, I know Snoop personally. He's a good dude, real good dude. And a lot
Works in the hood.
Works. Oh man, he has some
With the
tremendous
kids.
programs for young boys. Like he does.
He's great.
He does a lot of work outside of your average rap, gangster. That whole. I don't want to put him in that box anymore. But the pressures are real, peer pressure. Whatever the case may be, we just have to surround brothers like
That's
that
what I
with
think.
some more soldiers, your generals like yourself, Daruba Ben Wahad, who was on our show a couple weeks ago, and the many legends that we have who can exert the right amount of influence on our artists, so they carry the right struggle.
That's why I want to begin to say that about him.
Yes, sir.
That was a good move, and let people know that there are people who recognize the value of what he did.
Yeah.
You had asked, I forgot what you asked.
I asked you, where do you think the future of black radio was heading?
First understand the function of radio. The function of radio is to disseminate ideas and information. The way media has been used in this society, the function of media has been to manufacture consent. Doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Manufacture consent.
To manufacture consent. So if a government or a corporation wants to do something, then they will get the media that they own to start to promote it, to start to talk about it. And they will start to sell whoever needs to be demonized so that the government can attack that country. They will lift up whoever needs to be promoted so that the government or the corporations can sell that product. They will, and so it is a battle that takes place on the level of ideas. We need to be involved in that battle. We need to understand even more clearly what the real function of media is. However, media also makes money. But you can't separate the two, which is what I believe has been happening. There are those of us who recognize how important it is that we are involved in this battle, in this idea battle. And we understand how important it is that we disseminate life-giving information. And music is one of the most powerful instruments in our arsenal. You know, Amiri Baraka said back in the 60s that we're involved in a war.
Rest in peace.
And as a result of being involved in that war, we need weapons. So he said to the black art poets then, if you're going to do poems, you got to do tank poems, airplane poems, bullet poems, machine gun poems. Your poems have to become our weapons. Mm-hmm. And so we understand how important it is to convey information. And music, you see, it's not just what the radio personality says in between the music. It's the music itself.
Right.
It is the music that is so powerful. Music becomes part of your DNA. Mm-hmm. You know, there are people who feel like, I know a sister told me once that she was turning down a job somewhere to leave the country because she didn't think she could get any Stevie Wonder music where they were sending her. But music, in a very real sense, becomes part of your DNA. It really does. Yes. Music can you in my film, Salt from Salt and Pepper says that she recognizes that music can lift your emotions. She said music can make you drive fast. Mm-hmm. It can make you slow down. It can make you feel better if you're depressed. Just the music itself can lift you up. Right. That's how powerful music is. If you study music therapy, you begin to see what music can do in your heart, in your mind, in your central nervous system. So the music is extremely powerful, and that's why it is so important what they say.
Right, frequencies, right?
Right.
Because Chuck D, definitely, I use Public Enemy.
Bass!
Right.
Bring the noise!
Like, they used frequencies that at first you don't even know if you liked it, but you were hooked. Mm-hmm. You couldn't change the station. And then the message that came with that was so powerful. And you felt it. You felt empowered by that music.
Yep. Something you said it was very important. I want the listeners to really focus in on this, is that we're in a war for ideas, right? And Rich Nice said to me that hip-hop is black people's natural resource. We think it and it becomes reality, right? So we have to really consider the power of our ideas and how it benefits us as a community. And the enemy knows that and wants to be able to control our ideas. If we're allowed to have ideas at all, they want to be able to control it and the effect of it.
Let me come back to what you just said. The enemy knows that.
Yes, sir.
Right.
We are the ones who realize it late.
Yeah.
So the enemy moves ahead of us,
yes,
understanding more so than we do the power of what we have. I was at a party some years ago. I think it was an Obama party, the first time he was elected. Mm-hmm. And so there's a brother who had this party, and there was a older white woman standing there at the DJ, and the DJ was playing James Brown. The white woman said, "Don't you have any R&B?" So I said, "But that's James Brown." And she said, "Yeah, but that sounds like military music. That sounds like marching songs. Don't you have anything that's softer, smoother?"
Yeah, put some cream in that coffee.
But wait. But what you had just said, what Cynical just said, that what she was pointing out, what you just said, there's an energy and a rhythm and a strength in the music.
Right.
One of the reasons that that James's music resonated with us so much so, because when he came with that music in the middle and late 60s, marching music was exactly what we wanted to hear.
Oh, wow. And
that music made sense to us
right,
without even hearing the lyric. See, when James said, "Give the drummer some," that made sense to us with just what you couldn't hear any words in what the drummer played.
Right.
But if you, now I don't know, y'all don't remember, there used to be a dance called the Boogaloo.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard of it.
You heard of it. And the Boogaloo looked like you were holding a gun in your hand. Ooh. Looked like you were holding a shotgun. In fact, there was a song that you did it off called Shotgun by Junior Walker and the All-Stars. Shotgun, and shoot him before he run now. But the look of the Boogaloo and the way you move your shoulders and the way you cock your head, it was a defiant look. Yeah. It was a defiant dance. And the music, before you even got to the lyric, the music was defiant. And that woman was right. That music did scare her and encourage us before James even began to sing. And so James could say hot pants. You know, It didn't make any difference what he said. Right. He would say stuff that, you didn't make sense if you put it on paper.
You couldn't even understand some of it.
Right? But a lot of people say.
That's right. But James would say hot pants. But it wasn't the lyric that you were responding to. as much as you were responding to the energy and
Yes.
the way he said hot pants. He was defiant, you know, and so the music is more powerful, and the enemy, brother, recognized it before we did. So the enemy said, we've got to stop that music. It's too powerful. It's too black. See, they never said to us what that white woman said at the party. They didn't say it sounds like marching songs. They just said it's too black.
It's too black.
And
Too strong.
And so black folks
Chuck
said,
D.
they didn't even say too strong. They said too black. But what they had done was they have begun through the rest of the media that they control to create an anti-black environment. So that when the letter that I just received from the FCC, one of the things they said to us was that in your first letter, in your second letter, your response to us, you pointed to the racial disparity, and you pointed to the damage that'll be done to the black community if we give these white folk this license.
Right.
Well, you didn't say that in your first letter, so we can't allow you to say it now. See, that's bizarre, right?
Yeah.
That's not a legal decision. That's a political decision. There's no law that says, as you make your argument in whatever kind of case, as you make your argument, as you appeal, as you find out new things that you can't include it in your appeal. There's no such law. But they invented a ruling that's not even a legal ruling. It's a political decision, because what the FCC and other white folk are trying to do is to marginalize black completely, so that in this multicultural environment, there's no such thing as black.
Yeah.
Right.
So that you can't come and say, what they're trying to say to us is that you can't come to us and say black people are going to be harmed. We say, as white men, that because there's this one black person, Mignon Claiborne on the FCC, and she does the best she can by herself. And the people in the Congress, Yvette Clarke and Hakeem Jeffries and Meeks out in Queens, the New York delegation, they don't do anything to support what the sister on the FCC does. Wow. They just take the check and go home. But
how can we support her work? She's not getting support from the Congress, which is supposed to represent the people. They're not really doing their job in that sense. But we, as members of the community, the people, how do we support her work?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Yes, sir.
Because, see, we have to move away from always doing things to put pressure on people to make them behave. Right. What we have to do is replace them entirely. Ooh, so that we have to stop trying to get Yvette Clarke to respond to us. We have to run somebody against her.
Right. Remove her from office.
We have to stop trying to get Gregory Meeks or even Hakeem Jeffries to respond. I heard a professional politician say the other day that her claim to fame, one of them, is that she's not afraid to speak truth to power. See, that's insulting. That if you get elected to office, you think we sent you there to speak truth to power. What we need from you is an agenda, a legislative agenda. What we need are some concrete changes. We need some real work being done. But see, since I'm not in office, I speak truth to power. We got plenty of people raising the issues and pointing out the contradictions.
Right.
I'm raising the issue with the FCC, but the professional politician has not yet supported me with this challenge of power. We move to challenge power. We don't get anything from the politician. What we get from the politician is that she's not afraid to speak truth to power. She's just afraid to actually challenge power.
Right.
Wow.
So we need to replace her. We need to replace Hakeem Jeffries. We need to replace Yvette Clarke.
Right.
We need to replace Gregory Meeks, because, see, when people elect Giuliani to office, when the conservative white folk elected Giuliani to mayor, they didn't say, now that he's mayor, we have to keep his feet to the fire. They said, now that he's mayor, we're cool. He's got it. He's going to look out for our interests. We can go on and deal with other things.
It wasn't an experiment. He was put in place to do certain things.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
And he's going to go and privatize the city. He's going to start privatizing city agencies.
Right.
He's going to start giving out contracts to white developers. He's going to change the zoning laws. When he came into office, the cop that came into the room, I forgot who was there. The cop came into the room. I forgot the incident now. Might have been Abner Louima. The cop said to the activists in the room, "It's Giuliani time."
That was Abner Louima.
Yeah,
Right.
it
He
was.
said it's Giuliani time. And that cop didn't mean we have to keep our eye on Giuliani. He meant that we have put him in. He knows what he's supposed to do. He's going to do it.
Right.
Can't be mad at him for doing, well, we can because of what he does. However, we need the same kind of commitment. We have leadership. We have people in our community who are righteous, who have integrity, who have talent. And we have to support them in a meaningful way.
To your point about, like money, right? But money, the dollar bills that we use is really just a symbol of human interaction. The real money is people power, right? That's the real commerce. How do we organize people power, right? So it translates maybe not into dollars, but into action that maybe even money can't buy.
See, there was a saying back in the 70s, maybe late 60s, revolutions taking place around the country, and those revolutionaries would say, yeah, weapons are wonderful, but the power is with the people.
That's right.
See, but we have to do it. Well, you'll ask some good questions. What we have to do is put all of that together, the people and the money, because see, in this society, Cynical asked earlier how many millions. We spend more than $1 trillion a year.
But spending largest country on the planet just based on what black people
just what we spend. But spending $1 trillion does not give us any influence.
Right.
We have to use our money. Let's stay with the money and the people.
Right.
We've got to convince the people to use their money to influence policy rather than to impress.
Right.
So we are spending money to impress. We're spending money on anything.
Sneakers, rims,
because
cars, jewelry,
material things.
weaves.
We think that even now to wearing somebody else's hair, we think that spending money to impress is a ticket to liberation. That if we show these people who hate us how much money we are willing to spend, that they will respect us. The reason they don't respect us is because of how we spend the money. See, how can anybody respect you? For a few years now, people have been talking about how damaging the food at McDonald's is, how it's 8 to 12% meat. It's made up of water and gristle and dog food and all kinds of stuff.
And ammonia. And
Yeah, but people have been pointing that out now for some time. How can McDonald's actually respect black people, even though McDonald's has a black president? And some black women executives at McDonald's told me that you don't have to worry. McDonald's is in good hands. His brother grew up in the projects. He gets it. Just silly stuff. But how can
Maybe
they?
That's why they're closing one by one.
But how can they respect you if they know that you know that the stuff they are feeding you is not real food?
It's actually poison.
And you continue to buy it. See, we think that if we keep buying it, they will love us. If you stop, listen. Your generation.
Right.
If y'all could we all need to help with this, but if we could get black folk to stop buying McDonald's for 90 days, you would be able to write their policy memo for the next 10 years.
Right. Wow. Because they would see the power of the consumer.
And you use your money to influence policy. That is what we have not done. We have thought that if we spend enough money, people will like us. When the ad agencies went to Essence Magazine used to be black owned, and they could not get advertising dollars based on how many black women actually read and took that magazine seriously. They should have gotten a great deal more money. Their salespeople at one point in the 70s went to the ad agency and they pitched for the kind of things that black women buy. They pitched for brand name, Calvin Klein and people like that to advertise in the publication. And they were told that we don't mind black women buying this, but we do not want to appear to be soliciting black women to buy these products. It will diminish our product.
Wow.
Because
it's like Timberlands.
But wait. Because black women are not that sophisticated yet. Now, at that point, the magazine is supposed to say, wait till you see the editorial next month.
Right.
Wait till our audience finds out how you really feel about them. That's not what they said. They said, You know you're right. But we represent today's black woman. So then you saw underneath the banner name Essence, you saw a little logo line that said the magazine for today's black woman.
Right.
That wasn't for you, Cynical. That was sending a message back to Madison Avenue that we recognize our shortcomings. And we now are letting you know that we are appealing to today's black woman. And see, I was speaking at a church, and I've been naming, I'm not going to name names this time, but I was speaking at a church, and there was a prominent black actress there whose parents were the music directors at this church.
Okay.
And so I spoke and I talked about that whole situation. And so we had a little dinner after, you go in church, you go down, y'all don't know about going to church. You go to church
Every once in a while,
every now and then.
Funerals,
You go
weddings, I'll go there.
Yeah. You go downstairs in there and they have food for you. So we're eating the food, and I was sitting between the prominent black actress and her mother.
Uh-huh.
And the prominent black actress said, "But Bob Law, I heard what you said, but isn't that true? I mean, I see myself as I am today's black woman. I'm not like yesterday's black woman." I couldn't get a word out. Her mother said, "I beg your pardon."
Ooh. Right, because I was going to say yesterday's
right.
black woman is my mama.
She's talking about her mother, who made her career possible.
Right.
Who
made her.
Who made her, right? That's what I'm thinking.
In addition to making her,
You know what I mean?
and made her and did not give up on her,
Right.
and made her career possible, sustained her all the time she was coming through school and all the things she. So it is a change of priorities. Here, let me just say it like this. We have to begin to think of doing things that are game changers.
Yes.
Yes.
The rest of the world is already doing it. They call it regime change. We have to do the same thing. The future of black radio is in your hands. You have to now think about, first be clear and understand the function of radio.
Right.
But don't surrender radio. See, don't do internet or alternate radio instead of radio. Do it in addition. We don't surrender any of it. We don't give it up. We have to do this, and we have to take back and make profitable actual commercial radio so that you could own a radio station, so that you could own a record company and prosper. And you have the power to do it if we can organize our community as on the consumer level.
Right.
To let's begin to use money to influence policy.
Wow.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Law. That was a wealth of knowledge.
It's brilliant. We're going to have to do a part 2
I think so.
very soon.
Things are still changing. And
Yeah.
I want to talk more at some point about the corporate structure, all the monopoly.
The minute parts of the corporate structure so we can really create a strategy to attack the corporation
Right.
in an effective way.
So I just want to leave people with this organization called Industry Ears in Washington, D.C. And it's a think tank of entertainment and broadcast professionals, and they are dedicated to revealing truth and promoting justice in media. And so if you are not happy with what you're hearing, the radio station, your local radio station, you can go to this organization and they will help you file an FCC complaint. So the form is on their site, industryears.org. Google it. And so...
Last point before we close it.
Yes.
Something you said about black people, how we influence the circle, right? Speaking of Davey D, early this week, he explained how when he was talking to one of his executives at one of the stations he worked at, they explained to him, they drew a circle, a big circle, and they drew a smaller circle, right? And he said, in the smaller circle represents us as leaders of the culture, right? But our job is to get the rest of that outer circle involved. So we have to water down our message here. So Davey said, Sway from the Wake Up Show,
yes,
his response to that is actually, no, that smaller circle represents a pebble. And when you drop the pebble we're supposed to reverberate and change the rest of that circle. So that's what we're looking to do here with the Legal Broadcasters, B Minus Radio. And we're going to continue that mission and hopefully carry the baton that you passed to us, in the way that you you could respect.
Thank you for coming down, Mr. Law.
Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Everything great. Great to have you back with us, sir. Pleasure to get you on the program to get some of your thoughts. Anything that you want, in case this might be folks' first time hearing from you, anything that you want to make sure you share so they know about the work that you've done over the years?
Well, I just want to cooperate with your format. Deal with what you were dealing with. That'll be fine. Whatever comes to mind.
Outstanding. Before we get to Maurice White, right at the beginning of the year, a huge loss, third-generation physician Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. When you were with us last year, you talked about when you were doing the outstanding broadcast Night Talk that you had Dr. Frances Cress Welsing on your program. Is that correct?
Sure. Number of times, yes.
Wow. What was the response in terms of when you were bringing her on back then? I'm sure this had to be just her talking about her theory of white genetic annihilation in the 70s. What was the response when you were bringing her on?
By the time she was on Night Talk, she had already been established as a credible, trusted authority, very much respected. But we met Frances Cress Welsing. I met Frances Cress Welsing when I started in radio in the early 70s doing a Sunday afternoon talk show called Black Dialogue. And at that time, not many people around the country were aware of Dr. Welsing. And I remember that there was a guy, a white social scientist, I guess I don't know if he's really a social scientist, had a theory about black people being innately inferior. And so when he talked about black people being inferior, at a time when black people were pushing for equal treatment, he was widely received. He's very much steps into the same mindset that Donald Trump exists in right now. You know, Trump's acceptance is not a new thing among white people. Whenever there's someone who attempts to demonize a demagogue and claim that whites are best suited for special privilege, they are widely received, or warmly received. And this man, I forgot his name, Stockley, something like
William
that.
Shockley.
William Shockley. Forgot him already. And we tracked the general manager at the radio station where I was working. It was a black radio station, but that was in the day when there were few black general managers. And we had to really struggle with the white general manager to allow Frances Welsing to debate Shockley, and particularly based on her, at that time, the Cress theory of color confrontation. And that was our first meeting. We interviewed her a lot. We had to struggle with the white general manager. People were not, even black people at Howard University were not warmly embracing Dr. Welsing. And so that was the beginning. We were there. I was there, and starting with Dr. Welsing, right in the early days of her career and of her going beyond Washington, D.C. But by the time I did Night Talk, there was no questioning her credibility, her credentials. There was no questioning her authenticity. And she was firmly established as a credible voice and raising some really significant issues. You know, there's a friend of mine who's a therapist, a clinical therapist, and she says that a serious problem in the black community right now is the issue of mental health. And Frantz Fanon pointed out that oppression will drive you crazy. If you don't really fight back, if you don't move to throw off the oppressor, if you make up all the other kinds of behaviors and attitudes that allow oppression to become normalized, which is what a great many black people do, it'll really drive you crazy. It'll have you saying, you'll be black, saying that you don't want reparation. You know, you'll be black and say that you don't think that anybody should repair the damage that institutionalized racism has caused in this society to black people. You be black and say you don't even think that that damage should be repaired. You'll be crazy. And Francis Wellesley, in dealing with the roots of inappropriate behavior based on what racism does and color consciousness does, and dealing with the inappropriate behavior that white supremacy creates, is that her work is even now not fully understood. That is not understood, but the importance and the significance of her work even now is not fully understood, as she began to address the mental illness that really does exist within the community, within any community of oppressed people, particularly when the people don't even realize that they are suffering. And so she made a major contribution, woke a lot of people up, and helped us to understand what the kind of psychological environment we were trapped in.
Ashe, absolutely. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, we were fortunate to have her on the program many times over the years. Huge loss, and we'll continue to have our remembrance and appreciation of her scholarship. It has been just a really tough 2016 already, and the year really just started not shortly after Dr. Frances Cress Welsing passed, just last Wednesday evening, the transition of Earth, Wind, and Fire founder Maurice White. And I'm sure there are some people, particularly younger people, who maybe they only know Earth, Wind, and Fire from songs like September or Boogie Wonderland that, people play at weddings and parties and that sort of thing. And they might be saying, well, what does Maurice White have to do with racism? Yeah, it's sad that he passed, and, great musician. They did a lot of wonderful music. But what does that have to do with racism? Your response would be?
Well, part of the reality is that almost everything is affected by and operates within the context of institutionalized racism in this society. And it operates within the context of white supremacy. A black musician is very much a victim of race in America. It's one of the reasons that musicians leave this country. Years ago, Max Roach and his wife at that time, Abby Lincoln, went to Japan, and when they came back, Abby wrote a poem. And the poem said, "Japan, Japan, good for my man." And in the poem, he talks about how Max was so well received and treated with such great respect. And people acknowledge, Max Roach might have been the greatest drummer of all time. And people in Japan acknowledged that and applauded that and treated him like he was a special talent, a gift among us. And so she said, "Japan was good for my man." At the end of the poem, it said, "But was it good for my man?" Because he had to come back to America. And then after having been experienced the treatment and the recognition that he deserved, you come back to America and you run into American racism, and you are reminded that of what racism and white supremacy actually operates, how it actually operates, and how it sets out to demean and diminish your talent, diminish your worth, even though you are a spectacular human being or a spectacular talent. So that any musician, Maurice White, Dennis Edwards, David Ruffin, any Smokey Robinson, any musician, and even before that, Billie Holiday and Billy Eckstine, and those performers, Della Reese and Carmen McRae, they, Sarah Vaughan is perhaps the finest female vocalist ever. But Sarah Vaughan could not have, but she never made Barbra Streisand money. But she can sing better than anybody on the planet. But the opportunities, and because I heard Lou Donaldson in an interview a few days ago say how this music industry is so structured that it has very little to do with your talent. He talked about a woman who sings off key who had a hit record. And he talked about other musicians and he named Kenny G and people who are making enormous money, having hit records, having TV specials, going on tours, and they are by no means the finer or the finest performers or musicians in the industry. It is how this industry is structured. You know, there's a book called Rhythm and Business, talking about R&B, and it's R&B music. It's called Rhythm and Business: The Political Economy of Black Music, and it is indeed a political economy. The political economy, as you know, is the economy that is created based on political decisions, based on policy. You know, there are people who become millionaires not as a result solely of talent, but as a result of the policy decisions that are made that affect their careers and affect their lives. So there's a handful of people who really emerge, and there's so many other people of equal talent and maybe sometimes even greater talent who don't prosper to the same extent. So Earth, Wind and Fire steps into a music environment that was being not totally controlled, but it was a certain kind of music because we make such wonderful music. So rhythm and blues is such wonderful music. You know, people making that kind of music, and that music, soul music, and then funk, if we're talking about popular music. And there's almost not really a formula, but to some extent, there's a certain kind of music that is being accepted as really very good music, but it's the music that we kind of thought that black people would do and would appreciate. Then you get Earth, Wind and Fire, or a group like LaBelle, and you look at their music, began to particularly, well, both of them, but Earth, Wind and Fire, using different sets of instruments. There's one little instrument coming out of Africa called a Kalimba that Earth, Wind and Fire used. It's almost like a handheld piano. You know, it's a little small instrument that, but it didn't have a funky bottom, it didn't have an organ sound, you know, but they had a music that stretched the boundaries, and they stretched the boundaries. They introduced newer rhythms from around, from their experience, from the black experience in the world. They included more music. They stretched the boundaries. They changed the message to some extent, so that their music reflected a global consciousness. Right? And when black people heard it, it struck a responsive chord with us, like we already had that global consciousness in our hearts, and they struck that chord and took the music out beyond where it was being developed and practiced at that time, and they came with a new whole look. They didn't see at that time. Performers, you know, when you went to a concert back in the 70s, late 60s even, but when you went to a concert, the performers dressed like they knew you were coming. You know, they got dressed up too. They came out on stage and their look was all part of their performance. It wasn't. They respected their audience, and so they were entertaining you, and they were on every level. They looked the part, they sound the part. You know, they packaged themselves their look was a billboard for what they believed. If they were the Temptations, they were tall, tantalizing, well-groomed, tuxedos, haircut, shoes shining, tight choreography. That's what they represented. They represented young black men trying to make it in the world, in control of themselves, in control of their lives. They look good. They look the part. These are the black men who you would want your daughter to bring home. These are the black men who you saw walking down the street, and you felt good as they were representing their people. And if it was Earth, Wind, and Fire, then these were the young men who were just as stylish, just as polished, looked just as good, but they took it to another level, and they made it clear that we exist culturally on a number of levels, and all of them are stylish, and all of them all of those levels are to be respected. And in doing so, it could antagonize whites who wanted to keep black folk in a particular box, who wanted to contain and control particularly the black music industry. And here were these guys saying that we are going to legitimize, we're going to take all of our music, put it out in the universe. We're going to, and see, they're doing music that really can't be so easily imitated. Roy Ayers did an album saying Africa was the center of the world, and the record company told him that he could not say that on the album cover. So the album cover said Africa. It said the center of the world, and there was a little map of Africa in that line of copy. But they wouldn't allow him to actually say Africa is the center of the world. And that's because they have an agenda of ownership and control, not only of the music, but control of the culture. That they would attempt to define the historical legacy of black people in the world. And so, a group like Earth, Wind, and Fire, a group like LaBelle, pushing the limits, demanding that you hear us on our terms, that was a very powerful thing for them to do, and a very courageous thing for them to do, because they were challenging the norms that had been constructed for what it was that black people could do at that time.
Absolutely. Context of white supremacy. I know when you were with us before, and one of the really important points that you shared on that broadcast was that a lot of times black people who are entertainers, musicians, think that they are in the record-selling business, and you said, no, you are in the idea-selling business. And just to really highlight some of the points that you just made in regards to Maurice White being the founder and pace setter for Earth, Wind, and Fire, what messages, what ideas was he attempting to transmit to black people, both not just with the music, when you hear songs like Keep Your Head to the Sky, and I know one of our listeners, retired firefighter in Florida, he always mentions Devotion and Mighty Mighty, and not just the music that they were doing in that time period, but even if you look at the album covers, and they've got the pyramids, and as you said, dignified black people and their connection to African spirituality. What sort of messaging were they communicating to black people with their music and performance?
See, one of the powerful messages was, we didn't just fall out of the sky. We have a legacy. We have a culture. We are connected to a glorious African presence in the world. So, because when they do the pyramids, it recognizes, it doesn't simply make kind of a mystic statement, like they are tapping into the power of the pyramid. It is saying that we recognize from whence we come. We recognize that our music didn't begin with us, that this music began with our ancestors, and that they made it clear that they were part of a tradition, that they inherited a legacy, that had a cultural and even a political responsibility to keep your face to the sky. You know, the messages in the lyrics were very important messages at the time, because then as now, black people are under attack and many black people don't realize it. But the music is one of the most powerful communication tools that we've ever had. You know, the music strikes a responsive chord with all of what the music does. The music, the rhythms, the texture, you know, the tone of it, all of it is very, very important. And Maurice White seemed to clearly understand, he seemed to clearly understand what it was. Kind of looking for a statement that I had done that talks about the music. But, you know, coming out of the Black Arts Movement, for instance, one of the things that, and I think Maurice White understood that, one of the things that the Black Arts Movement said about the music was that the music represents the form of our experience in the world. You know, our music has always been a manifestation of who we are and how we feel. And it is the music that speaks so closely to expressing what's in our hearts and minds. And the music does it better than anything else. And Maurice White understood that. And, you know, for Earth, Wind, and Fire, real quick, I need to find my glasses while we're talking so I can. I wanted to just share this quote from Confucius with you. Confucius said that if you should desire to know if a kingdom is well governed, if its morals are good or bad, the quality of its music will furnish the answer. And that is absolutely true. It's when you look at the or listen to the music and even look at music that was being performed at any particular time within any particular time frame. You know, you look at the music of the 1950s, and that music is rhythmic and do-wop-to-do, do-wop-to-do, smooth and rhythmic. It kind of reflected how black people felt at that time. Then you listen to the music of the 60s, and the music of the 60s now is the boogaloo, and it's more defiant, and it's more shotgun, shoot them while they run now. You know, it's James Brown with your bad self. You know, the music now has another tone. The music always reflected where the people were at philosophically. And Larry Neal, who was one of the architects of the Black Arts Movement, has said that our music has always been the most dominant manifestation of what we are and how we feel. The best of it has always operated at the very core of our lives. It is the music that can affirm our highest possibilities. And there are some people who can't read, for instance, you know, as we go all the way back and people listening to music, but they could hear the message in the music. You know, there are some people who never went to a political rally, never went to church, never heard Jeremiah Wright speak. You know, some people who have just not really paying attention on a conscious political level, but they're listening to the music. And the music is saying, keep your head to the sky. You know, the music has got the messages that are teaching you that there's some value in devotion and explaining for you what devotion means. That the music is important to understand that in this society, music conveys social status. See, being associated with a certain kind of music can increase your social standing. Now, you remember there's considered a higher level of sophistication associated with opera, or what Europeans call classical music. or the level of cool sophistication associated with the music of Coltrane, Monk, Miles. See, it is not only the music that we like, it is the company the music puts us in. In this sense, the music creates a community or lifestyle that is validated by the acceptance of the music. So nowadays, it's the music that validates gangster and killing and disregarding and disrespecting women. But Earth, Wind, and Fire, even in choosing the name Earth, Wind, and Fire, calling on, suggesting by the very name of the group that they are calling on the essential elements that make the universe move, that energize the universe. And then the lyrics and the direction that the music is going, and to identify with them is to put you in the company of enlightened, truth seekers, progressive, cutting-edge thinkers. That's what the music does. And that's the company that the music puts you in. And Maurice White seemed to understand that and made a point to nourish his people and nourish the spirit of his people by deliberately creating life-giving and nourishing music. And I think that is something that gets overlooked. There are other performers who are doing the same thing. They just feel it. They just kind of feel it. They just do what they feel is right. And sometimes they don't know how right they are. But I think that Maurice White understood his opportunity as a music maker to nourish the very spirit of his people. And of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire would point out that they made music for everybody. And everybody can listen to and benefit from hearing that music. But it's like Toni Morrison, who just recently said, "I write for black people without apology." When everybody can appreciate a Maya Angelou poem, but when Maya Angelou says, "Still I rise," there might be a lot of other people who say, "Yeah, I can relate to that," but her own people feel that, sense that in a different and more profound way because of our experience in this society. And even though Earth, Wind, and Fire made the music really for everybody, but they came from a cultural base that was particularly meaningful for black people. And I always felt that Maurice White understood that.
Context of white supremacy, our guest, Mr. Bob Law. If folks have a quick question that you want to get in, Mr. Law has a full schedule, so he's not able to stay with us for the full program. But if you have a quick question that you want to get in, feel free, chime in, get your hand up. Just even connecting the two, we started off talking about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and then with Maurice White. What are your thoughts in terms of the concerted effort? I know we talked about last time, and you've done a prolific amount of commentary and writing on the war, the attack against black media outlets, black radio, where you don't have a platform, talk radio platform for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing to come and give her views. You don't have a platform for a Maurice White, the next generation of Nina Simone's or Earth, Wind, and Fire to give that nourishing, uplifting music to black people. Can you just speak to the efforts to make sure that we do not have the next generation of these type of black scientists, black performers?
Well, I'm not quite clear the question for me.
Let's see if I can simplify it. You would need a platform, black radio, black talk radio. You would need a platform for Dr. Welsing to come and speak or to hear the music of Earth, Wind, and Fire, Maurice White. And I'm asking, can you comment on the current racist attack to make sure that that platform doesn't exist so that you're not able to hear the next generation of Earth, Wind, and Fire? You don't have the platform so that Dr. Welsing can come and speak to black people now.
Right. Black people have been removed, or black thought, black intellectual property, black intellectual capital has been removed from the marketplace of ideas with the elimination of black media and with the elimination particularly of conscious black media and conscious black media replaced with frivolous media. frivolous black media, frivolous morning radio, all radio, disrespectful radio, people cursing and using the N-word and talking about in a derogatory and degrading manner about women. Those are the people who have made the degradation of black people normal. They have bought into the degradation of black people and have attempted to normalize degradation. And that's what Dr. Lisa English is talking about when she talks about the mental health issue in the black community. You have people who are on the radio now who really are suffering from a mental imbalance to use the language that they use and to think that that is keeping it real. See, that's insanity without fully understanding it. And it is because what Asa Hilliard has identified as cultural surrender. It's when you allow someone else to define your humanity, to define who you are, and change your language, change your language in terms of how you speak about each other, how you talk to each other. That phenomena reflects the kind of mental illness that is a result of refusing to fight back against oppression, not fully understanding white supremacy, and now attempting to normalize oppression, degradation, and white supremacy. So that, and in order to be able to do that, you've got to take the strident black voices off the air. You've got to take the black intellectual capital out of the equation. You've got to remove black critical thought, creative thought, innovative thought. You've got to take those real ideas out of the marketplace of ideas. And that is absolutely what has happened without people fully understanding it, because they're still hearing black voices, even though the things that the black voices say are irrelevant, harmful, anti-black, anti-woman, anti-life itself. And without realizing it, it's what happens when the oppressor gets inside your head. And the oppressor doesn't even have to be present. The oppressor gets inside your head, and then you will call your own women out of their name. You'll have lyrics like the song by, I think the guy's name is Schoolboy. So I got a shotgun, and here's the plot. Taking niggas out with a flurry of buckshot. The owl was gunning, and then you look up, and all you see is niggas running. And that glorifies killing your own people. That normalizes the N-word. It normalizes murder. It normalizes killing your own people. And there are people who pretend that I'm just keeping it real. But that is not keeping it real. And it is not the function of an artist to keep it real. The function of an artist is to create the new reality. So if your reality is pimps and hoes, and that's what you see on the street, your challenge and your responsibility as an artist is to write songs like Maurice White, to write songs that lift you above the gutter, to write songs and perform songs that take you to a higher consciousness. See, any baby can look out the window and say, this is what I see. Or any non-talent person, a person with no talent whatsoever, can just walk outside and you can say to that person, write me a little essay about what you see when you walk down the street. And they say, I see drug addicts, and I see, gangbanging, and I see this, and they just say what they see. Doesn't take any genius, any brains, or any talent to do that. The talent is when you walk down those same streets and you write lyrics that say, keep on pushing for higher ground. See, when the talent is when you write lyrics that say, keep your face to the sky. When you don't reflect the reality that was created for you by people who hold you in contempt, your function as an artist, as a critical thinker, as a thought leader, is not to just reflect what you see, but to prevent, but to promote, or promote rather, to present, I'm trying to say, to present not what you see, but what you can be. You know, and that's what is missing when you take black thought out of the marketplace of ideas and replace it with underdeveloped Negro thought. See, when I'm off the air, it's not just that Bob Law is not on the air. When there's no night talk, and I'm not on the air 5 days a week, now that means you don't hear from Francis Wilson regularly. You hear from Francis Wilson regularly on the Carl Nelson show on WOL in Washington, D.C. You know, and Carl Nelson is like one of the last progressive talk show people that we have who's on a daily basis. You know, Gary Bird is on in New York City, but Bird is on 1 day a week. But when I'm not on the air, that means that Maulana Karenga is not on the air anymore. You know, that means that all the people that you used to hear coming through Night Talk, Sonia Sanchez is also not on the air. Kenny Gamble is not on the air. All the people that I talked to, Dr. Claude Anderson is not on the air. The people that you were being introduced to that you didn't know about, Ollie Gates in Kansas City, an extraordinary black entrepreneur with a real commitment, conscious commitment to his community. But any number of things and people are no longer in the marketplace of ideas where you don't get an opportunity to hear and sample our ideas to help you decide how you want to move forward. And the only way it's going to change if we're dealing with commercial media, and commercial media is still the most significant, the most important. That's why people like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, and I don't know the names of all those other people, they are on AM radio stations all over the country. They are talking to thousands of people on a daily basis, 5 days a week, at thousands of people every 15 minutes. Radio is measured in quarter-hour shares. They are talking to people, and thousands of people coming in to hear them every 15 minutes because they're on commercial radio, and they get paid very, very well. What we are told is to go to alternative media where you don't get paid at all and leave the prosperity to the white supremacists. Let them have the airwaves. Let them have all the money. Let their families prosper and do very well. And we are looking for ways that we can keep getting the word out of love of the love for our people. But we're like WURD, the black-owned talk station in Philadelphia. It has made a strong commitment to serving the black community, but it doesn't make the kind of money that the stations that bewilder black people make. And see, that's what we have to change, and that comes from the audience. It's one of the things that we've been working on. I'm about to run out of time. It's one of the things that we've been working on that Dr. King asked us to do the night before he was murdered in Memphis, where he said that now the next thing we have to do is to direct our external direct action, or is to anchor our external direct action with the strategy of economic withdrawal. We've got to see, with all of the money that McDonald's and Burger King make from black people, see, it is outrageous, black people, that you would complain about not having any voice and no outlets for the scholars and thinkers among us who really love us, that you would complain that they are removed from the marketplace, but you don't demand that McDonald's, Burger King, spend money on black-owned media to keep that media afloat, the way they spend money on white-owned media in order to make white-owned radio prosperous. With all of the money that black people are spending on burgers and French fries, aside from the fact that that food is toxic and harmful and poisonous and causing type 2 diabetes and obesity and heart disease among black youth, aside from that, which ought to be enough reason in itself for you to stop eating it.
Amen.
But But in addition to that, they don't put any money back into the black community in a meaningful way. They give silly little charitable donations, gospel concerts that they make the money from. With all of the money that is being spent by black people, how is it if young black men are so important that Nike does not spend any money in black media? No commercials on black radio. No commercials in black-owned newspapers. With all of the money that young black men and older black men are spending on Nike, so you don't demand that people reinvest in our community in a meaningful way, so they take us for granted. And we like to talk about how we spend over $1 trillion a year, and we spend over $1 trillion, and we're spending even more, and it's going up every year. And so what happens is that black marketing people, like the people out in Chicago, I forgot the name of the research company that publishes the spending, what is called the Spending Power Target Market News, the Ken Smichael, those guys at Target Market. They like to point out that black people are spending all of this money and go to white corporations and say, black people are spending all this money on cola, spending all this money on sneakers, and all this money on this and that, and then we can show you how much money we spend. Based on how much money we spend, you ought to put money back into some black media, right? That is a silly argument. The Nike and McDonald's and Pepsi and whoever you go to, they say, if we are receiving so much of your money and we don't put any money in the black community, and we're receiving all this money that you just told us about, well, why do we need to put any money back? We're giving your money as it is. So see, the message ought to be to black people, stop spending your money. Hold on to your dollars. Economic withdrawal, as Dr. King said, and say to these corporations, we want to see black people back in the marketplace of ideas. And so we want you to take a radio station like WURD. We should be saying to McDonald's and Burger King and Nike and Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and whoever else it is, Maxwell, all the products that black people buy. So to be saying to them, spend money on that radio station, make it prosperous the way you have done for all other white-owned media, or we will stop spending our money with you. You have to use our dollars strategically and use it as a political tool in order to influence policy. You can't impress people with how much you spend, and that's why they ought to treat you differently. You will have to show them how much you are willing not to spend, how much of their profit you will affect by withholding your dollars. And that alone, and that is what it would take, rather. That is what it will take to change policy. And so to put us back into the marketplace of ideas, it will mean making black media viable again. Right now, black media is not viable. If you own the black radio, if you're black and you own the radio station, you're going to struggle. You're not going to make any money. You might be the station owner, but it's just like having a job. There are people who work for a corporation who are better off than the person who owns the black radio station, the black person who owns a small black radio station. Somebody working for American Express, like Brother Ken Chenault, he's better off financially, personally, than the owners of a lot of, there's not a lot anymore, but he's better off financially than many of the few black folk who still own a radio station. In New York City, the legacy black radio station, WWRL, not making any money for years and years. It's just been sold to an Asian entrepreneur. It's going to turn it into it's already a Spanish language station. It's going to turn it into an Asian language station. The black people who owned it, they're not as well off as Ken Chenault at American Express. They're not as well off as the Dick Parsons when he was working for Time, Life, Warner, whoever he was working for. We have to change that and make being a black entrepreneur in a sensitive arena or area like media. We have to make black media viable. So that there's no point in saying things like we're going to build our own radio station. We have our own radio station and are losing them weekly, daily, not daily, but certainly weekly, monthly. We are losing them. And losing them because at this point, black media is not a viable investment. And it's not viable because the audience allows the corporate America to take us for granted, take our dollars for granted, and refuses. They don't even refuse, they just ignore. They refuse by just ignoring us and don't put any money back. That is what has to be changed.
Really profound thoughts from Mr. Bob Law, talk show host for Night Talk, again, the first nationally broadcast black talk radio platform, and his documentary film, Saying It Loud. Again, real pleasure to have you back on the program. Appreciate you giving some insight on Earth, Wind, and Fire, and its founder, Maurice White, just transitioned last week. Hopefully we can have you back on the program again soon to continue to address some of these issues and get some strategies for things that we can do to try to solve some of these problems. But again, thank you so much, Mr. Law. Please enjoy the rest of it.
All right, now, thank you for having me. Okay.
Absolutely. Take care, sir.